So this is just an overview of the actual processes. So you can see this is what I'm doing down here, but the R&D manager has got sort of oversight of the various things that I'm doing. Once the audit has been conducted, if I identify any critical or major findings, then I notify those within, actually it's usually less than 48 hours. If it's critical, I'd notify them immediately. But certainly within 48 hours, I'll have communicated with the R&D manager just to give them a quick overview of the audit findings and to identify any of those that are major. So that enables them to then take whatever action they want to do as quickly as possible. And then, as I said, I prepare an initial report. It goes to the investigator. Now, once it goes to the investigator, they work with R&D, or the clinical trials unit delegated by R&D work with the investigators to come up with responses to the audit. And then it goes through to the final report and the certificate. So as far as actually conducting, well, as I've described this really, I get the list, the R&D manager notifies, I liaise with the PI, and then send the communication tends to go through the R&D manager. So again, I think this is important because then it shows them clearly where it stands within the organisation. It's rooted within the R&D office, so they can see it sort of coming from their own management structure. Now, to put the findings in context, when I first started, I didn't grade them because I think there are arguments about whether you should grade or not grade findings. And I think one of the key outcomes that we're trying to achieve is to affect change. And sometimes people get very exercised in arguing about whether something's major or other and put a lot of energy into that. And sometimes I think that energy is a bit wasted, whereas it could just be spent on getting on and sorting it out rather than saying, is it major or not? But management quite likes gradings. And so I do put gradings in, but try and sort of deliver them in that context. More usefully, in the last 3 years, I've introduced categories for the findings themselves. And this, certainly when I'm coming to do feedback, and I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a moment, I think it helps to look at all these different areas. And so these are the areas that I've defined with input as to sort of how to group the different findings. So people can look down, if there are a lot of findings to do with informed consent, then that's the area that you need to be looking at next if you're kind of rewriting SOPs. And I think it helps people prioritise what actions they're going to take. So we now have findings categories. I think feedback is really important. And it's quite common practice with audits to provide verbal feedback to the research team during the exit meetings. As well as that the researchers do get the full written report. There are some modalities where the researchers perhaps just get the findings or a table with the findings on, but I think it's very important that in this context they do have sort of access to all of the information and really that they're partners in the process of, we're all trying to improve things together. So they get to see the full report. Then every year I give a presentation of all the findings that have been in the previous year's audits. And all research teams are invited to this, not just the ones that I've audited, but all the research teams across the trust. And it's usually quite well attended. You usually get more than 100 people coming, really, to sort of find out what's gone wrong so that they can make sure that they're not doing it. And having the audit categories there is really useful, and I tend to sort of go through category by category and say, in terms of, informed consent, this is what's gone wrong. In terms of documentation, it's what's gone wrong, so they can sort of view it all in that context. Also, I prepare a summary which goes out as a newsletter to